Hi, thank you for coming to our presentation on academic resilience during the time of COVID-19, which will focus on experiences from the USA and Argentina. I'm Dr. Melissa Morgan from the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I'm conducting this research with my colleague and friend, Dr. Maria Isabel Pozo. And my research team and I have worked on resilience and academic resilience for quite a while with the Latinx population in the United States. And with this research collaboration, we're very excited to work cross-culturally, looking at the experiences of international students and other students in Argentina during COVID, as well as the Latinx students in the US. So thank you very much for your attention today. We plan to talk a little bit about the background of COVID-19, the pandemic, and how this has impacted education in both Argentina and the USA. We plan to speak a little bit about how international students in particular have been impacted during COVID, what this has done to impact teaching during COVID from an instructor viewpoint, and to outline some areas of future research and tell you a little bit about some of the research in which we are currently engaged. So specific barriers for international students. We know that all students need to find study time. We know that it can be particularly difficult financially for international students who are having to come to a whole new place and find a place to stay and support themselves. We know that international students can be challenged by a lot of really intense information that may feel foreign to them, that's not of their culture necessarily, particularly immigrant students. This can be even more challenging. You're away from your home and your family, there may be language difficulties, and overall, one just may have difficulties understanding the cultural nuances and feel like they don't belong. And sometimes, unfortunately, may even be told that they do not belong in the new country. We know that during COVID-19 pandemic, this has been even more difficult. For all of us, it's been difficult, but imagine for international students. We know that there have been shelter-in-place orders around the world, so everyone has to stay home and not go out very much. This has necessitated remote learning via the internet, which I'm sure many of us have experienced has its limitations. We're thankful that we have it, but it's not the same as in-person pedagogy. International students, therefore, do not get the social activities and immersion experience that might have helped them and that they would have enjoyed under normal circumstances. And then, of course, the difficulties that all of us are facing with uncertainties about when will we have a vaccine, what will education continue to look like, both in Argentina and the US, the two countries on which we are focusing. There are a lot of doubts, and this causes a lot of stress. Despite all of these barriers, however, students seem to be displaying remarkable resilience. Resilience is defined as the ability to bounce back and beat the odds, and is considered an asset in human characteristic development terms. Garmezy and Rudder are two researchers who talk about this. And today we're focusing in specifically on the construct of academic resilience, which contextualizes the resilience in the education arena. And so academic resilience refers to the increased likelihood of educational success despite adversity. During COVID in the US, it has been a bit, education has been a bit chaotic, as in many other places. In the US, some universities have had students return in person, only to have many students test positive for COVID in the first few weeks and to send everybody home. Other universities have stayed open in person, such as the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, but they require extensive COVID testing for students, faculty, and staff very frequently, and the students have to report these results to be able to stay on campus. Other universities have gone completely remote, So students are not even allowed on campus, nor are faculty and staff in many cases, which brings up concerns about access. How can people access the resources, the library, for example, the different tools that, the computer labs, the different tools that students are used to having, and in fact, faculty are used to having. Not to mention, when we go remote, we certainly are all familiar by now with the difficulties in disparities in access. Some people have good internet connections, some people have no internet connections, some people have many people at their home who maybe don't understand why they're on the computer all the time or why they need quiet for their studies. So it can be quite difficult and impact education. Other universities are doing some combination of remote and in person. We recently had a decree about international students saying that they had to be in person full time to stay in the country. This was backed down on a little bit, but has still been creating a lot of difficulties because it did not count remote education. So lots of stressors. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Pozo, to tell us a little bit about some of the circumstances of higher education in Argentina during COVID, and to talk a little bit about our future directions of the research that we're doing and the research that needs to be done in this area to better understand academic resilience.
Thank you, Melissa. You were absolutely clear as usual. Hi, everybody. Glad to have you attending to our presentation at the SIP conference. I am María Isabel Pozo from the University of Rosario, Argentina. To move on to the situation in my country, let me tell you that the academic year at schools and universities here starts in March. So the pandemic coincides with the beginning of classes. Therefore, higher education in-person classes did not start at all this year. Some universities, like mine in Rosario, postponed the beginning of classes a couple of weeks, imagine just a couple of weeks, to readjust the course, whereas others, like the University of Buenos Aires, started in June. They postponed so much because they thought that by that time things would be normal. Anywhere, in any case, the pandemic closure, the lockdown, has been very strict and very long, really. In this scenario, with the total virtualization of education from the beginning of the year and during the complete academic year, all the students from other cities stayed home. As regards us international students, since the mobility was cancelled for the whole year, more than half of them returned home or they did not come at all in Argentina in 2020. According to some statistics, it is estimated that only 1 in 3 remain in the country out of the total of more than 90,000 foreign students. Faced to mandatory virtual instruction, each university already had a virtual campus, but just a small percentage of teachers used them, and very occasionally or as a complementary resource to in-person classes. At the same time, technological equipment became really necessary, which was not always assured. During the past years, we've been going through a strong economic recession, so the impact of COVID-19 has been significant in Argentina. During the second quarter of 2020, the country suffered a decline in gross domestic product of 16%, the largest retraction in its history. In this context, both teachers and students suffer from lack of appropriate technological equipment, such as good internet connectivity and an updated and personal computer, that means not shared with other family members, as well as a private space to study at home. In such circumstances, in many occasions, the students have to connect to synchronous classes with the cellular, with their mobile phones, using its data, which is more limited and more expensive. Well, even in this difficult context, Dr. Morgan and I are conducting a cross-cultural research project that we started last year, relying on her team's experience in academic resilient concept. We are looking at the experience of Brazilian students in the medical school in the University of Argentina, or Rosario in Argentina. While not originally designed to look at COVID impacts, preliminary results are showing pragmatic effects such as those mentioned previously, an emotional impact of not being on physical campus, spending time in classes and socializing. One of the most important and interesting parts is that we are involving local students to collect the data, so they share students' experiences and how to be resilient in their condition of university students compared to those of international students leading their study lives in the pandemic. Not a lot is known about the direct experience of the students during the COVID pandemic, so we are glad to be working on it. Besides, academic resilience was not a very widespread concept, but we are noticing that it is the motto in different conferences and publications, so we are happy about it. So stay tuned for further results from this important area of study, and thank you very much.